Going back to November 2020 today and an episode of AEW Dynamite, because we zoomed backstage and who was laying on the floor? It was none other than Jon Moxley. Now, as a fan, we were like, oh, I wonder who did do this terrible crime. We waited and we waited and we waited. Here we are in 2024, and we never found out. So I guess the answer was no one. Now, of course, this does happen in every single wrestling promotion and company ever made, but I suppose it was a bit different with AEW, because while I may be forgetting another one, this was basically one of the first times it had happened. It's a bit like a rite of passage. You have to introduce a story, and then in a few weeks' time go, I'm not going to tell you any more about it. Imagine we did this on any other TV show. Jon Moxley was our AEW World Champion though, and about to lead All Elite Wrestling through a very difficult time. And on this night too, he had cut a promo where he had essentially said, oh hi, my wife Rennie Paquette is with child right now. So he was gonna become a dad. So if you didn't like him beforehand, now it's just like, oh my gosh, you're so wonderful. Jealousy is a powerful tool though, so before this evening was at end, somebody had spied Jon walking backstage and they beat him up, which of course was there to lead you into next week so you could find out who done it. We've already covered this. I don't know. Now, the really cool part, or what some people predicted, is that the pose that Moxley was left in was none other than the Hangman pose, which you do get in tarot cards. Now, look, when it comes to AEW, you can't be walking around saying the Hangman pose without taking the finger of blame and pointing at none other than one cowboy Adam Page. This was so damn cool, though, because it felt like a detective novel come to life, and hey, during this period, and even right now, Page had always been pushed as a tippity-top guy, so yeah, given that Moxley was the world champion, you could do a feud with Adam. That would make perfect sense, and what better way to do it than by starting with a secret backstage attack. The internet went totally nuts with this too, which usually means you have done something right, when all of a sudden we got another theory, because somebody was reading the tea leaves and they decided, no wait, you can screw Hangman Adam Page. I think this was Kenta. What? Now, to be fair, during this period, the relationship with AEW and New Japan was growing, and what was Kenta carrying around at the time? It was a magical briefcase that when he did cash in, would give him a shot at the IWGP United States Championship. And who was holding that belt at this time? If you said anyone other than Jon Moxley, you have not been listening. Of course, during this time as well, we were knee-deep in the pandemic, so whatever plans we did have on paper for Moxley and Kenta, well, they would have been delayed. So now that everyone had kind of got a grip on this, why don't we just pull the trigger? I mean, Kenta coming in and winning this belt to bring it back to New Japan, especially because travel was so hard, would be a 2 + 2 = sense. Although he would have also just pinned the AEW World Champion, which raises a bunch of other questions. So there was a lot to this, but once more, regardless what was happening behind the scenes, you just know that AEW was putting more trust in New Japan and vice versa, because it was a barren world out there. They needed each other. So it did begin to shine a light on both promotions when another theory was raised. It was like, well, I can kind of see where this is all going. I believe Kenny Omega is going to be the next brand new AEW World Champion, so surely he has to tie into this too. I mean, there was a connection there, kinda, sorta, but of course if he lays Moxley out and that allows Kenneth to win, then when Kenta does fight him, title wouldn't be on the line to begin with. So there was plenty of setup until, yep, we didn't get any of this. So I can only presume, in the word of kayfabe, Jon Moxley stood up, he dusted himself off and went, well, I've had a bit of a fall there, but why do we fall, Bruce? So we can get back up again. Now look, this is a tremendous way to live your real life, but when it comes to a wrestling storyline, well, don't cut the mustard. The summarizations continued though, because of course soon after this, the Good Brothers were going to arrive at All Elite Wrestling. So then individuals were saying, well, they could have jumped Jon Moxley. I mean, they'd quite literally teamed with Kenny Omega, who has now gone on to win that World Championship. So we'll just say it was them. But the television show never told us this. That's just what we came up with. The final piece of the chat also connected to Impact Wrestling, now TNA, because of course that's where the Good Brothers were coming from, and that's where Kenny Omega was about to jump to, where he was going to have fights with the like of Sami Callihan. So this could have been what we decided to do, but once again, it's just shrug emoji. Anything we say at this stage is pure speculation. It does bring us to the point though, where every single suspect we have laid out here did have the same motive, which was to attack Jon Moxley. So maybe this was just a timing issue and Tony Khan couldn't get it to line up properly. So maybe that's why we had the cowboy as the red herring to knock you off the scent. And then yeah, maybe like Kenta couldn't make it to the US of A and the Good Brothers were busy that day. I don't know. It was a little bit of a shame though, especially because when Jon Moxley finally did lose this championship, it would have been a nice pat on the back for people that had been watching, a nice little reward, if all of a sudden he did go into a feud with whoever this individual was. And that has another benefit to it. He can take his eyes off the prize for a while. He needs to get his revenge. To be fair though, during this time wrestling was so tough to watch because we didn't have any fans, so I just actually respect that any single wrestling company tried to give me something to be entertained by. But as we do have this series called The Unsolved Mysteries of Sports Entertainment, well, we had to talk about this one, and as always, if you do have an idea, drop it in the comments below. I mean, maybe it was you. Maybe you attacked Jon Moxley. In case you need to be caught up as well, we then eventually got to the Revolution 2021 pay-per-view, and the main event was indeed Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley. That's when they did that exploding barbed wire death match. When we got to Double or Nothing, Kenny was then defending his belt against Orange Cassidy and Pac, whereas Jon Moxley had teamed up with Eddie Kingston to lose to the Young Bucks, which is when everyone got chatting again. They were like, oh, it's going to be Eddie Kingston that attacked his friend. But I'm just going to catch you up to speed, hence why this video exists. It was not Edward. Now, given that it was just a 30-second thing on a television show, it's not as bad as some of the other ones we have talked about, but I still really would like to know. So if you are in charge of AEW and you want to confide in a bored a-hole, I'd massively appreciate it, and genuinely, I wouldn't actually tell anyone. I'd much rather have that knowledge and have your respect. Now, I suppose if we do get into the nitty-gritty, this could actually tie into the fact that we were getting to the end of 2020, which means Tony Khan had her first year as a proper booker. Because don't forget, if we go back to January of that year, he had gone up to Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega and said, listen, you're all fantastic wrestlers, but I just kind of feel like, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, so now I am going to be the head chef. Now look, I'm not complaining about that at all. It was the right decision to make, because when he did do that, AEW started heading in that direction. Well, I just thought it was fine anyway, but that's a different video for a different day. But by the time you get to November, maybe it was the first instance when he was like, oh man, I can't remember what we did. My head is all in a pickle, and it's just something that he forgot. I mean, sometimes I leave my house and lock myself out of the door because I forget my keys. So who am I to criticize anybody? You never know as well, because AEW is still such a young company, maybe they will just make a documentary one day and they'll address this. I mean, WWE has done that with some of their unsolved mysteries, and I would like to know, because, sometimes when I'm just doing some admin or doing the washing up, I do begin to ponder who did attack Jon Moxley backstage. And as of, March 2024, no one knows. Maybe not even the powers that be. Maybe it was like the Black Scorpion, and we never wrote down the answer on a piece of paper to begin with. But otherwise, please do make sure you click the screen, which is another wrestling unsolved mystery, and see if you can solve it. It's like that weird television show that used to wear. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of other names that could tie into this. Maybe it was Doink the Clown, or it was Repo Man, or maybe it was the Great Khali. Does anyone know who the Great Khali was in November 2021? No, I don't think they do, unless you are the Great Khali. Look, this has now gone totally off track, as it always does. Thanks for joining me. Take care of yourself. Goofy Wrestling for life. Goodbye.